Going into Still Wakes the Deep, I was confident in my ability to withstand the horrific horror cliches that I knew were about to come my way. But instead of just dealing with your typical chase scenes and jump scares, the Chinese Room decided to pull something out of its sleeve I hadn't experienced before. The most traumatic dialogue and voice acting I've ever heard in a horror game. You play as Kaz McCleary, an electrical engineer on the Beira D oil rig running from the law and some stupid decisions. Short interactions at the start of the game told me everything I wanted to know about my place on the Beira D and who the people on it are, and only made what came next all the more traumatic. After drilling through something that was probably best left alone, the rig descends into chaos. No one takes charge, so most of the time I just darted around the rig, desperately trying to save as many people as I could, all while fixing the Beira D, which mostly just involved pressing buttons in a certain order or flicking the right switches. Usually I enjoy having more complex puzzles in horror games as a way to break up the action, but I didn't miss them this time around, as the excellent story made up for it. It's more interesting than any key code puzzle I've come across. Plus, if you don't fix everything in a timely fashion, the rig will explode into a flaming ball of gas and oil, taking you and everyone else down with it. But even with your expert button pushing, you can't rescue everyone. In the chaos and fear, sometimes all I could do was try to ignore the blood-curdling screams for help echoing from the people I'd grown so fond of as I ran to my next objective. The monster that arrives on the Beira D isn't as novel as Still Wakes the Deep's surprisingly emotional and superb voice acting, as most horror games involve some kind of bizarre and violent creature, but that still doesn't stop me from breaking into a cold sweat every time it got too close. The interior of the rig is constantly morphing and breaking around the creature, which means it could be anywhere at any time. But even with all of that, getting chased through the dark hallways or flooded areas by something recklessly barreling down the rig took at least a couple of years off my life. It never got easier. My time split between the inside and the outside of the rig is just right, so I never got bored or overwhelmed with either. This impressive achievement helped make Still Wakes the Deep feel very concise. The game also looks superb. I spent lots of time taking pretty pictures around the rig, even when I was on the verge of death. The loading scenes between major locations never lasted too long, and I only experienced one black screen towards the end. There's also a lot of settings to customize. Almost all of my advanced graphics were scaled to the highest options with no issue on my RTX 3070, and you can also remap keyboard bindings or adjust controller settings easily. If you can bear with the emotional toll and terrifying moments, then Still Wakes the Deep is an experience that I couldn't recommend more highly. Its unsettling monster and unique setting are elevated by something that's rare in horror games: meaningful relationships with other characters.